Here is the complete, uninterrupted voiceover script. It is written as a continuous narrative, designed for a 20 to 25-minute documentary-style video. There are no headers, time codes, or scene descriptions, just the pure spoken text. Imagine waking up one morning to find out that the work of your entire life, every word you wrote, every melody you hummed into a voice recorder at 3 in the morning, and every memory associated with 15 years of grinding labor no longer belongs to you. It didn't just disappear. It was sold. Sold to a man who you believe tried to dismantle your career piece by piece. This isn't just a story about a pop singer. This is a story about the most ruthless, brilliant, and high-stakes business maneuver in the history of the modern music industry. We are talking about a woman who was backed into a corner, stripped of her assets, and looked at a contract that said she was finished. Most people would have taken the check and walked away. Most people would have faded into nostalgia. But she didn't. Instead, she looked at the fine print of a decades-old document and found a loophole worth over $1 billion. This is not about singing. This is about leverage. This is about how Taylor Swift turned a devastating betrayal into a financial empire that rivals the GDP of small countries. You might think you know her story, but you have never looked at the numbers like this. We are talking about a strategy that bypassed Hollywood studios, crushed ticket monopolies, and rewrote the laws of intellectual property. And the craziest part is that she did it by selling the exact same product twice. If you think you are stuck, if you think the system is rigged against you, you need to listen closely. Because what she did requires zero musical talent to understand, but it requires 100% pure nerve to execute. Let's strip away the glitz and the stadium lights for a second and look at the reality of the situation in roughly 2005. We see a teenager walking into record labels in Nashville handing out demo CDs. It sounds romantic now, but at the time, it was an act of desperation. The music industry is designed to eat young artists alive. The standard deal is simple. We give you money to record, we own the recording, and you work for us until you die or we get bored of you. She signed a deal with Big Machine Records. At the time, it was a lifeline. It was the only way to get her voice heard. For over a decade, she played the game perfectly. She wrote the hits, she toured the world, she made the label millions upon millions of dollars. But she made a fatal error, one that almost every young entrepreneur makes. She built her house on rented land. She didn't own the masters, which are the original physical recordings of her work. In the music business, he who owns the masters owns the kingdom. They can license your voice for commercials you hate. They can sell your legacy to people you despise, and they collect the lion's share of the royalties forever. Fast forward to 2019, the lease on the land is up. She wants to buy her work back. She has the money, she has the desire, but she is told no. Instead, the label is sold to Scooter Braun's Ithaca Holdings for $300 million. In that sale, her legacy, consisting of 6 albums of work, was the main asset. She was traded like a baseball card. She found out about it online, just like the rest of us. Picture that moment. You are one of the most famous women on earth, sitting in your kitchen, scrolling through your phone, realizing that a private equity firm now owns your voice. You have cash, you have fame, but you have zero control. It is the ultimate nightmare for any creator. It felt like checkmate. The industry experts all said the same thing. Get over it, move on, make new music. You can't fight private equity, you can't fight the contract. But they forgot to check one tiny clause in that original paperwork from 2005. A clause that allowed her to re-record her music after a certain number of years. It was a standard line, ignored by lawyers for decades. No one ever used it because re-recording albums is expensive, risky, and historically a commercial suicide mission. Consumers want the original, not the copy, or so they thought. This is where the entrepreneur takes over the artist. She didn't just decide to record new songs, she decided to devalue the asset she didn't own. Think about that strategy. It is scorched earth. If she couldn't buy the house, she was going to build an identical, better house right next door and burn the old one down. She announced she would re-record her first 6 albums. The media laughed. They called it petty. They called it a waste of time. Who is going to buy Love Story again, they asked. But she wasn't just selling a song, she was selling a narrative. She went directly to her consumer base, her fans, and explained the economics of the situation. She weaponized transparency. She told them that if you listen to the old version, the guys who betrayed me get paid. If you listen to Taylor's version, I get paid. She turned streaming a song into an act of moral support. This is a masterclass in branding. Suddenly, listening to the old versions became taboo. Radio stations who need to keep listeners happy started swapping out the files. But here is the genius part that you might have missed. She didn't just copy the songs note for note. She added vault tracks, songs that didn't make the original albums. She created scarcity and new value in an old product. This is like Apple releasing the iPhone 4 again in 2023, but telling you it has secret features that were banned 10 years ago. You would buy it. And millions did. When Fearless Taylor's version dropped, the numbers were staggering. It debuted at number 1, but the real victory was in the boardroom. The value of the original masters, the ones she didn't own, began to plummet. Investors who had backed the purchase of her old catalogue started sweating. She was actively destroying their investment in real time simply by outworking them. She was in the studio day and night, meticulously recreating every guitar strum, every breath, ensuring that the new versions were indistinguishable from the old ones to the casual ear, but owned 100% by her. It was the most expensive, exhausting, and brilliant screw you in corporate history. But re-recording was just the defensive play. Now she went on the offensive. The world opened up post-pandemic and she launched the Eras Tour. This wasn't a concert. It was an economic event. The Federal Reserve literally mentioned her tour in their reports on regional economic growth. Let's look at the math because it is terrifyingly large. The tour grossed over $1 billion. Not million, billion. That is more than the GDP of several small nations combined. But how did she maximize this? It wasn't just selling tickets. It was the merchandise. It was the dynamic pricing. It was the sheer demand generation. When Ticketmaster crashed because millions of people tried to buy tickets at once, she didn't just apologize. She used the outrage to further solidify the bond with her customers. The US against the system narrative grew stronger. However, the true stroke of genius came with the movie. Usually, if you want to put a concert film in theaters, you go to a major Hollywood studio. They distribute it, they market it, and they take 50% of the profit. Taylor Swift looked at that model and said, "Why do I need you?" She bypassed the studios entirely. She went directly to AMC theaters. She negotiated a deal where she kept 57% of the ticket sales. She set the ticket prices herself. She cut out the middleman. The result was that the film opened to $92 million in its first weekend. She made more money on the opening weekend of a concert movie than most blockbusters make in their entire run, and she kept the majority of it. This is vertical integration. She is the product, the manufacturer, the distributor, and the marketing agency. By late 2023, Bloomberg officially declared her a billionaire. Her net worth hit $1.1 billion. But unlike other celebrity billionaires who made their money selling makeup or sneakers, the vast majority of her wealth came strictly from music and performance. She's the first musician to hit that milestone solely through her art and the business of her art. So, where is the lesson for you? You might say, well, I can't sing and I don't have millions of fans. That is true. But the principles she used are universal. First, intellectual property is the new gold. Whether you are writing code, creating a course, or building a brand, you must own the asset. If you are building it on someone else's platform like Instagram, YouTube, or a corporate job, you are vulnerable. You need to find a way to own the master of whatever you create. Second, direct-to-consumer is the only safety net. The reason Taylor could bypass the record labels and the movie studios is that she owns the relationship with the customer. If you have an email list, a community, or a direct line to the people who pay you, you don't need the gatekeepers. You don't need the boss to give you a raise. You just release a new product to your people. Third, reinvention is profitable. She didn't just tour her new album. She packaged her eras, her past, and sold it as a new experience. Look at your own skills. What did you learn 5 years ago that you can repackage? What old projects can be revitalized with a new vault track equivalent? Maybe it's a case study from an old job. Maybe it's a skill you haven't used in years. There is value in your archive. And finally, spite can be a powerful fuel. Let's be honest. A huge driver of this success was the desire to prove the doubters wrong. It wasn't just about money. It was about reclaiming power. Use that. If someone told you you couldn't do it, if you were fired, if you were overlooked, don't get sad. Get strategic. Build a Taylor's version of your career. Today, Taylor Swift operates more like a multinational conglomerate than a pop star. She moves markets. When she attends a football game, the viewership of the NFL spikes. When she mentions a brand, it sells out. She has achieved a level of influence that money alone cannot buy. She has turned her fan base into a voting bloc, a consumer army, and a marketing force. Her net worth is climbing every day as the streaming royalties from the Taylor's versions continue to roll in. She effectively killed the value of the old masters. The private equity firm that bought them eventually sold them, likely realizing that fighting her was a losing battle. She won. But notice something important. She didn't win by playing by their rules. She won by reading the contract, finding the leverage, and then outworking everyone else in the room. She is currently working on directing feature films, expanding her real estate portfolio, which is worth over $150 million alone, and continuing to re-record the final albums in her catalog. She is not slowing down, she is diversifying. She understands that momentum is a perishable resource, and she is squeezing every drop out of it. Here is the truth. You don't need a stadium of fans to apply the Swift strategy. You just need to look at your life and ask yourself what you own, who controls your income, and how you can cut out the middleman. Maybe you are a freelancer giving 30% to a platform. Maybe you are an employee building assets for a company that will fire you in a heartbeat. It is time to start building your own equity. It is time to start your own re-recording process. It might be scary. It might take time. People might tell you it's pointless. But remember, the girl who sat on her kitchen floor realized she had lost everything and decided to rebuild it brick by brick. She didn't wait for permission. She didn't wait for a savior. She bet on herself. And that is the only bet that always pays out in the end. The question isn't whether you can do it. The question is, are you willing to do the work to make sure that when the history of your life is written, you are the one holding the pen? Don't let them own your masters. Own your future.